Hey everyone, let's talk about An Absolutely Remarkable Thing by Hank Green. And I have to admit, when Hank first announced he wrote a book, I wasn't that overly interested. It was pronounced as being a YA science fiction with a main female character, and I wasn't interested. Nothing wrong with that. As time progressed, more and more good press came around, and a lot of people seemed to like the book. So I got more and more curious, and you know me, I'd rather be early on the hype train than late, because then the book has much more chances to living up to its expectations. The more a book is hyped, the more expectations you have, and the less chances the book has to actually be that good. So I decided to get it early, and I don't regret it. I quite liked the whole thing. As I said before, it was marketed as a YA science fiction with a main female character. So I was quite surprised when it started off and the main character is a 23-year-old just out of college. And the sci-fi element were unexplained robots visiting Earth. So it was something completely different than I had imagined hearing YA sci-fi. And that was good. On the other side, the main plot with the robots, I can't say I was overly interested in that or blown away. It kept the story going, but it wasn't what kept me reading, and it wasn't what kept me interested in the story, and I don't think it's what's best about the book. Now, the whole book focuses more on April, the main character, and the effect the visiting robots have on her life. Because due to circumstances, she gets involved in their story and also gets famous through that. She starts off by making a YouTube video, then she gets engaged into social media, gets interviewed on TV, and we see her progressing or walking down this road of fame and internet fame, social media fame, and then real fame and being recognized, and all the effects that can have on a person. And I think this is what this book does really well. It really is a product of our time in so many elements, but especially in the element of getting famous through social media without actually having anything to be famous for other than that you were in this right spot at the right time. And this is what this book does really well. And I think what really helps is that Hank Green is a person that has experienced that. He comes from a place of authenticity. He knows what he's talking about. And you can really feel that it's something that is told from a person who's in that community or situation and not from the outside. And I think that is what's really, really well done about the book. So let's look a little bit at the writing of the book. When I started reading, I could really hear Hank's voice ranting. It took a little bit of time until April got her own voice, because I am so familiar with Hank Green's narrative voice, and it's very prevalent in the book, and you can see it in the writing. Of course, that is something that happens to people who are familiar with Hank Green. I don't know how the writing would feel for people who are not familiar with Hank Green and his narrative voice, but for people who have been watching his videos or hearing him talk for years will recognize that. And it also makes us, or me at least, a little bit more biased to enjoying and liking the book, because the narrative is something that I'm familiar with, and if I didn't like it, I would have stopped watching Hank Green years ago. When it comes to the YA aspect, sometimes I don't mind if a book is YA. With other YA books, I just cannot deal with some of the aspects that are typically YA. And this book only had one that annoyed me. And this is when characters are overly superficially described in how they look, what they wear, or how cute they are. And this happened especially for two characters only in this book. And it just highlighted how these characters were described as compared to all the others. And it made me wonder if that was on purpose or by accident, but I don't know. Another thing about the narration that I noticed is, well, I'm not sure if I like it, if I mind it, or if it's okay because it serves its purpose. It's the whole thing is told from a later point in view. So we have an April telling us a story who has learned something out of the things that happened to her. She comes away from a smarter position in life, and she tells the story from there. So she also manipulates us while she tells us the story into constantly putting herself down, saying that she didn't know that back then, but she knows now, saying that she was mean back then and that she was horrible. And she also does that so that we feel sympathetic to her and still like her despite the things she does. And it is a way of manipulating people that I'm not sure I'm okay with. But it works, and it needs to be like that for the story, because it also shows us that she has learned and come away smarter out of this experience than she was back then. So indecisive about that one. Overall, I'm quite happy for having read the book so early with all the false expectations I still could have about the book, and thus giving the book a chance to speak for itself. And I think it did. I quite liked it. But I have to say, I cannot say how this book would read for people who are not familiar with Hank Green and who are not familiar with the internet and social media fame. So I don't know if this works for everyone. Okay, enough of me talking about the book. Let's hear what you have to say. Have you read it? Are you interested? Have you been following Hank Green, or are you not familiar with him? Let's talk in the comments. Thank you for watching. Bye bye.